Why don't you state the question and then flip that thing over?
Are trans women really women?
Yeah. No, I mean, flip that one over, the thing. Okay, so what's your position? Are trans women really... Hey, I can't see you, though. Let's move this over. Are trans women really... Speak into it a little so we can hear. Are trans women really women?
I think so.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
This is great. Finally, I have some... I finally found someone to talk about this. I can't tell you how good this is. Okay. I was so excited at this point because I couldn't find anybody who would take that position, and finally I had found someone. So I was just floating in the clouds. So how do you define a woman?
I define a woman by her energy, by her femininity, by her mind, her ability to, what's the word I'm looking for? Seduce.
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it. So I was thinking that I didn't want to say it. And I was also thinking, I don't know how successful trans women would be at seducing men, but I'm certainly not going to bring that up, and I'm certainly not going to bring that up at this early stage of the conversation. But I thought it was a very interesting word that you were searching for that I was also searching for, or I had in the fore of my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so one question that's come up is, should trans women be allowed to participate in women's sports?
100%.
So the reason I changed the question, I changed the topic, is because I just had the feeling in those initial moments that the question would be too broad, particularly for her. And I thought if we narrowed the question down, it would be easier for both of us to get a handle on. Okay, great. Oh, wow, this is
Yeah.
great. I've been finally, nobody will take that position, so this is really good. So tell me why. Oh, and before we do that, let's define sport. So not chess. I'm talking about,
Basketball.
Yeah, football, MMA, jiu-jitsu.
I think so.
Okay,
For
so
sure.
tell me why.
Because she's a woman. She's, her whole life, she's felt like a woman. Her whole life, she's moved, maybe in privacy, but has moved like a woman.
See, I thought that was really interesting, too. There are lines of literature about when people start to think about transitioning, how to think like a woman, or a man, and how to act, and what's entailed in that. And I was hoping the conversation would go down the path of rights, because that, to me, would have been most interesting.
I think that, women are strong. So
Do you think that it gives the trans woman an advantage over a woman?
no.
Okay, so I instantly knew at that point there's a very good possibility that this conversation would go nowhere.
Because I've seen many, many women that are like strong,
Yeah.
stronger than men. So, why is a trans woman she's a woman. She's a strong woman.
So what if I showed you tapes, for example, of MMA tapes of trans women going into, you know what MMA is?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if I showed you tapes of trans women going into MMA fights and literally beating women, people who were born biological, who self-describe as women? Would you think that that gave them an unfair advantage? So this is the beginning of the idea of defeasibility or disconfirmation. If I had had more time in the conversation, I would have asked her for her conditions. So it's really good not to give your own conditions, but given the time, I just stated some possible disconfirmation or defeasibility conditions. That is, under what conditions could that belief you just articulated about women being as strong as men be false?
I don't think so. It's like the same thing as saying, what if I showed you a tape of a woman, a biological woman, beating the shit out of a man? It's like, strength.
So you don't think? What about weightlifting? Like, do you think that it confers an advantage to be born a man, or do you think that just men and women have the same strength? For example,
I think men and women can have the same strength. I mean, I've seen scrawny men. I've seen strong men.
Okay, so at this point, I was realizing or questioning the fact that this would go anywhere. So I was thinking, well, should I bring the conversation back to values, or should I continue to hammer on defeasibility questions? And I had a feeling that hammering on
on defeasibility questions would have been a mistake.
What about people at the top, like the top 10% or 5% or even 2%? Do you think that those differences manifest themselves?
What do you mean? Explain.
Well, like if you train as a, well, not you, but like if a young woman trains really hard and she's an elite athlete, do you think that she would be as strong as a man who trained really hard?
I think that if the woman was focused and had the right diet and stuff like that.
You do?
Hell yeah.
How come there are no women on professional football teams?
Maybe because people think a woman can't handle the hits that happen on a football field.
Okay, so that's clearly false. So then the question is, what do you do with the conversation with somebody who, she seemed very sincere to me? What do you do with the conversation when you're talking with a sincere person who just has factually inaccurate starting points? Well, one thing is you can hit them with more defeasibility questions.
You know,
But you don't think it has anything to do with the fact that people born biologically male are at an advantage?
I just think men are a little crazier than women.
That's certainly true.
I don't
There's
think,
no
like,
question.
why would a woman want to get on? You know, that's.
I don't know, money, but there'd be some women who would want to do. I mean, you would think that there would be like 2%.
I've seen there are like female football things that happen. I've seen it. I've actually interviewed women
With
that.
in a professional team
It's
that
not
women.
really. It's not a professional like. It's teams. What do they call it? I can't remember.
So I realized at this point that the conversation was more or less over, and then I had a different objective for here, which was, rapport building and listening, et cetera, possibly a few more defeasibility questions, but she seemed like a really nice person. And I think when you look at Chapter 6 and Chapter 7, I think that belief that she held was morally motivated, and it was certainly not based in evidence. So there's no point to try to press the evidence or push the conversation forward. And it was just, it took a different tone. Or not a different tone, but it took I had a different idea in mind for how that conversation should resolve.
And I know in
I know
Atlanta.
literally nothing about sports.
I know in Atlanta, a lot of women do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go on men's football teams.
Not on the men's football team. Like
Oh,
they
and
play
what?
football, women, like women.
Oh, with other women. Yeah, no, that's not my issue. My question is, so you don't think you think men and women have basic biological, they're basically biologically similar, and there's no advantage for someone born a man who self-describes as a woman to go into women's sports?
I think it's fine.
No, I didn't say it's fine, but you think there's no advantage to it?
I don't think there's an advantage. No,
Okay.
because I've seen transgendered women who are, really small
Yeah.
as well. Like it's a size thing. It's a.
Oh, we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
So if I were to show you examples to your satisfaction of trans women dominating women's sports, would you change your mind?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
for the
of
conversation. I
course.
appreciate it
You
very
got
much.
it.
Appreciate it. So, see, there's no gotcha. There's no,
No,
it's
it's all
just a
good.
conversation.